Well, I'm just excited to hear from Tim right now, and I want to find out in terms of, can you learn faster? Can you learn to be rich faster?
What's the key to that?
Well, I think that there are a few, and for a little bit of context, people know me as an author, but I've actually made about 10 times as much in startup investing. So Facebook, Twitter, Uber,
companies that you've invested in.
Evernote. Yeah, these are. Okay. I was early stage in all of these companies. First advisor to Shopify, which just IPO'd. So I've practiced these learning techniques in the world of finance and investing.
Perfect.
I think the reason that, or the best way to become rich quickly is to learn to test assumptions. So when you find best practices, say that there's a consensus about, let's say, I'll just give one example, like diversifying, which can work. But if everyone's saying diversify, you should ask, are there counterexamples? Are there contrarians, right? And I'm not saying that you should do one or the other, but learning to ask that question, what if I did the opposite? Are there any outliers who hold a different opinion? Is one very important piece. The second is realizing that information isn't enough. You can't just read a little bit and then snap your fingers and become rich. You have to practice. You have to practice.
We're all about practice.
Right. So, for instance, a great way to practice is if you're looking at public stocks, is paper trading for a while, right? Getting used to hypothetically having a budget and spending that on different stocks and watching not only how the stocks perform, but how you react to the movement of the stocks, because this will be the last thing I say before we
So you're saying you learn something, you read something, you study something, and then you got to go put it into practice.
You have to practice it.
Change isn't going to happen. Education's not going to happen without that.
That's right. And so
practice is called making mistakes and getting experience, right?
Right. So, for instance, I think that if a high schooler or a college kid asks me, or that age, what skill should I have among writing and speaking clearly, negotiating. You need to know how to negotiate. You can't read a negotiation book and then go into your biggest negotiation. You'll fail. So it's like go to a state farm, or not farm, go to a state fair or something like that, to a flea market, and give yourself $100 and negotiate. See how much you can get for that $100. Right. You have to practice these skills.
So how do you get rich doing that?
The way that I generally coach...
Well, let me ask you this question. Okay, what you're talking about is a lot of pre-IPO work, probably, when you invest?
Not necessarily. If you're going to, for instance, bootstrap a startup, or even your own company...
No, but I understand that's how you made your money. You didn't really start the company. You put the money in a company that was coming out.
I've started my own companies.
Right.
So I've made millions of dollars in my own companies, too.
Okay, so what did you do to do that? You know what I mean?
Yep. So I had to negotiate very hard early on. I had to ask myself, for instance, if you're starting a business, who are the 1,000 true fans that I want to have? What they read, where they go, what they buy, and really having a clear idea of your core audience, number one. Number two
it's called know your customer.
Yeah. Then scratching your own itch, right? So ideally you belong to that demographic. And identifying...
You share the same values of that customer.
And the same problems, right? So you solve a problem that you have, and then simultaneously you're solving it for this group of 1,000 people who have these kind of psychographic similarities to yourself. And then you create, I think that creating a category, if you're an entrepreneur, again, investing, different thing, but if you're creating a product or service, creating a new category as opposed to trying to dominate an existing category is very important. So like Amstel Light, right? First light imported beer. They created that category. Therefore, they could dominate it and own it in the mind share of the people. So those are a few that immediately come to mind, but the glue that holds all of those together is, in my mind, negotiating, knowing how to ask for a lot or ask for very little, say a discount, and actually arrive at that outcome, I think is the glue that holds a lot of that together.
You seek masters, you find out who your customer is, and you gain entrepreneur skills, right?
Yeah, you do. I mean, and these are principles like the creating a category versus dominating that people have used after the 4-Hour Workweek to build very, very large businesses. Like Quest Nutrition is the number 2 on the Inc. 500 right now, and the CEO very publicly credits 4-Hour Workweek for helping to create that company.
Congratulations.
Thanks. So he's an amazing entrepreneur. So these broader principles are very, very flexible. And the reason I say this is important is that the tools are going to change. Like it might be Twitter, it might be Facebook, it might be Tumblr, it might be this, it might be that, direct mail. It could be anything, but you need these core capabilities, and that includes the ability to learn, right? This meta learning.
And there's one piece that's very aligned to us, Tim, which is you talk about learning from experts, learning from people who are actually doing what it is you want to do, correct?
That's right. Yeah,
There's a lot of experts out there that aren't practicing what they preach.
Yeah, you need someone who didn't learn exclusively in a classroom. You need someone who's been on the front lines and has faced the clear tactical difficulties and battles that you're going to face if you try to do anything interesting in life.
Once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki at the Rich Dad Radio Show. Today we're talking to Tim Ferriss. He's host of the Tim Ferriss Show. He's best-selling author of The 4-Hour Workweek. And he's talking to us today about how fast can a person learn to be rich. And as Kim knows, I've dedicated my life, probably 40 years to this. Exactly as Tim says, is you got to be part of the demographic. I mean, you have to know who your customer is and what is driving them in the gut. And for me personally, as a why do I do what I do, is I'm still trying to save my old man, poor dad. This guy is an academic genius, but a financial loser. And it's really hard. This is the thing that when Kim and I were teaching our form of our company's accelerated learning, was there are people like Tim says who are naturals. They're natural entrepreneurs. And for them, learning is fast and easy. But the problem I was having was with people who already thought they were losers. And so they actively admitted they were losers. So how would you change that? You know what I mean? It's easy if your perception is you're a winner, you're smart, you're a natural entrepreneur. But our challenge was always probably the bottom 20% in the class that always reminded me of my dad. Highly educated, professional people, very smart, honest, hardworking. But there was like a block to it. Just like I have a block to my cell phone. You try and tell me how to use my cell phone, I just